Thank you very much. We don't want this to be like Penn and Teller. I don't know who's going to be the more quiet one. So hopefully we'll both interact. We tried to get our story straight on the way over here, but we actually didn't speak. So you'll be the judge as to what happens. That very nice author's description was written by a really great journalist who I think is hiding back there, named Brad Buchholz at the Austin American-Statesman. I'm just here to tell you, if you perhaps some of you had read the story about this book in the Statesman, and that might be what drew you here. I would say that you were drawn here perhaps by the beauty of that writing. Brad is just a wonderful writer. Please support newspapers and Brad by extension by reading newspapers, whether online or an example of a journalist at a daily mainstream paper who really can be poetic. I'm biased because he wrote such a lovely story about us, but please look for his byline and just read that paper. Should I go first?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm guessing, well, I'm not guessing. I could look around the room, and I know there are many FOMs here, friends of Molly, and some people who were kind to come hear us again or hear me again after yodeling about this book at other places. But I was just in Dallas over the weekend and speaking about this book in far, far north Dallas. It was sort of somewhere near Canada. We were so far north. And I just, when you're speaking in public, sometimes you wonder what you should say, and especially in a milieu like that. I feel a little liberated here, and maybe we'll say some things that I wouldn't say in Dallas. So bear with me, those of you from Dallas. I myself lived in Dallas, as our introducer noted, but there's a difference, and Molly was very perceptive and keen in her opinions about the two cities, so I feel like we're in safe turf here. But I would start the same way I started in Dallas. Here's Molly, and of course we're presuming that people as they walk by are thinking this is a new Molly Ivins book, and not our name is very small as well. It should be, and that maybe they'll the publisher cleverly thought, well, maybe somebody will think this is a work by Molly. And I was telling a friend that it was very, very humbling. Mike and I talked about this too, that it's very, very humbling to work on a book about Molly. In fact, I was telling a friend that I was actually depressed working on a book about Molly, personally deeply depressed, not maybe so much about some of the frankly difficult circumstances that we lingered with a little bit in Molly's life, but about the fact that I realized when we were looking at her that I myself could never have as many friends as Molly Ivins. She had friends everywhere. So it was very humbling and somewhat depressing, ego-deflating to realize how popular she was. And to wit, when we began looking at her life, Molly was a pack rat, and I think left a transparent legacy available for people who wanted to know more about her, those who loved her and admired her. And when you take a look at her archives, which are housed over the very wonderful Center for American History at the University of Texas, you see literally thousands and thousands of letters that she kept from readers, perhaps some of you, over the years. And they just simply say, they begin almost universally, "Dear Molly." And then people apologize in the second sentence and say, "You'll forgive me for that presumption of familiarity. I feel like I know you. I feel like you're my friend." And I could use that one-word description, Molly, with an exclamation point. This 100,000-watt smile, that it was very open and embracing and welcoming. What you see in her papers, we saw this repeatedly, that people wrote to Molly from small towns all across the nation, reaching out to Molly as if she was a lifeline, and frankly, a political lifeline, a role model lifeline, if you will. There was a letter from a small town in Oregon, Oceanside, Oregon, which I happen to know a bit about. My mother-in-law lives there, so I know how tidy it is. No cell phone service there, gratefully. But someone wrote a letter, from there to Molly saying, "I feel alone, except for when I read you. I feel that I can think the thoughts politically about progressive politics, things that need to be changed, and you're my medium and you're my lifeline in a sense. And there's thousands and thousands of letters like that. It's positively, inspiring and also very humbling. She had a true extended family, I would say. Of course, when I told somebody that I was depressed about all this, and I said, instead of sympathy, my friend said, "Well, you're not as funny as Molly. You're not as talented. Manny, we can just go linger with that for about a half an hour." I said, "Please, enough about that." But Molly wasn't always Molly. Molly was Mary when she was born, and some of her really good friends who are here, I see a few, knew that about her, but I don't think, broadly speaking, a lot of folks knew that she was born Mary, and it sort of evolved into Molly. We toyed with the notion that it was an outgrowth of the fact that she was nicknamed at an early age the Mole, M-O-L-E, because she loved to burrow in her room in Houston, in River Oaks, where she grew up. Those of you from Texas know what that might symbolize. River Oaks. She grew up with George W. Bush, basically down the block. And I'll get to that in a second, or Mike will. But Molly was Mary first, and she burrowed in her room and read voraciously. Her very good friends, I keep pointing over here because I see two of them who had been to her house, know that she had close to 4,000 volumes in her book collection. They ran from the Harlequin romances, which she loved, to the 800-pound books about Winston Churchill, all of them equally read, voraciously read, dog-eared, underlined, notes written in the margin. And that began at an early age. Molly was just a voracious reader, eternally curious, the great trait of a great journalist. Just acquisitive in the right sense of that term. She just fully open to new ideas and sets of experiences. And kind of, even before she was a teenager, she was a wise guy teenager. But she would be in her room and she would read, and her brother and notably her father began calling her the Mole, and it kind of transmogrified to Molly. So if you were curious how it came to be that way, that's in part where it came from. But her dad was quite an interesting man, and we, I think, had some difficulty in trying to reach a sensitive balance in describing him. Not to sound too, pious or sanctimonious, but it was difficult because her dad was very autocratic, as he was described to us, and frankly, as Molly wrote about him in her notes. There are 150 bankers' boxes for you to look at if you wish at the Center for American History, and by bankers' boxes, 3 or 4 feet long, yea deep, the kinds with drawstrings around, the kind that law firms use for dead storage of important papers. And they're filled with Molly's life. Every single item she ever had. Absolutely. Every single item that she, I think, kept from a conscious age, she put in there and just retained. Just fascinating. I found it fascinating. I can't remember last week. And so Molly kept everything from her grade school report cards, her pay stubs, her letters home from Camp Mystic. Who among you has been there or knows of it? Camp Mystic, a famous camp out of the Texas Hill Country where LBJ would send his kids. Molly went there and wrote these at an age of 10 and 11, was writing these very acerbic, opinionated, stinging letters about how she kind of didn't really agree with the camp counselors and even the kids in her down. She was developing at a very early age a wit. But the reason I bring it up, her life is really there in those boxes, and it was easy for us to begin following her arc, if you will, and how she developed, and as well her own opinions of her dad. We made a very conscious decision, if I may say so, speaking on behalf of Mike, to try to anchor the book with Molly's own words. We decided deliberately not to anchor the book with her columns, because you already own those. Her books were bestsellers, and you read her work over the years. So we presumed a familiarity, and frankly, those works exist. Why replicate it and fill up a book? We wanted, though, to fill up the book with Molly's voice about her own circumstance and her evolution. And a large part of the book really is about Molly's evolution, how she got to be that one-word person, Molly, with an exclamation point. We wanted to chart that evolution see how she became. Frankly, we could argue till the cows come home in Texas. I think the most important journalist to emerge from Texas.